few weeks, and even months, Albertans have been talking a lot about the K-6 draft curriculum. As you are aware, the response to what has been developed, how it was developed, and who was at the table has been swift and strong, with an overwhelming message that this curriculum is not fit for students. We've all heard that the draft curriculum is not developmentally appropriate for children ages 5 to 11. Last week, I told you that our survey had found teachers were not comfortable with teaching the material in it, and 9 out of 10 teachers, in fact, said that they were unhappy with it, and 95% of principals said they didn't feel comfortable supporting it in their schools and communities. Its design and content do not reflect the current research on elementary school learning, brain development, and student engagement. It is poorly structured and fails to create the cognitive framework necessary to facilitate meaningful learning, and the specific content identified is disjointed and full of random facts. It doesn't respectively include Indigenous or Francophone histories, contributions, or perspectives. Although for second graders, it does include Charlemagne and Genghis Khan. It doesn't reflect an appreciation for inclusion or diversity. One of the survey respondents said it best. This curriculum is developmentally inappropriate and will cause kids to get frustrated with learning and develop a bad attitude about school. All in all, this curriculum is fatally flawed. Many teachers believe that putting it before children will cause harm, and we cannot allow that to happen. Teachers, parents, education experts, and school boards have all stood up and said no. So today, we're calling on the government of Alberta to immediately stop work on the piloting and implementation of the draft K-6 curriculum until an independent, full, and open review and rewrite can occur. The independent review must meaningfully involve a broad cross-section of certificated Alberta teachers and faculty members from the Alberta Faculties of Education, and must be properly inclusive of Francophone and Indigenous perspectives. Before a pilot begins, the rewritten curriculum must be developmentally, structurally, and pedagogically sound, and it should enjoy the broad support of all Albertans. The government must stop work on the curriculum as it's currently standing, bring the teaching profession back to the table, and focus on developing an appropriate, modern curriculum that is worthy of our kids. I'm also here today to issue a statement of support for school boards and teachers. As of Wednesday, over 20 school boards have stood up and said that they will not pilot this curriculum. We support these boards in this decision, and we are also calling on all school authorities to refrain from participating in or directing their teachers to participate in the curriculum pilot. Furthermore, teachers who believe this curriculum is flawed and potentially damaging to student learning have the professional responsibility and moral right to refuse to participate in any voluntary piloting. Government and school boards must respect the decision of individual teachers not to participate. Albertans might be wondering, how did we get to this point? Frankly, it's because the teaching profession was left out of the curriculum development process. Teachers know what will work in a classroom and what will not. And it is clear that the content included in this draft was not written by teachers, that it did not include their views. And this is fundamentally why they got so many things wrong. Teachers understand the readiness of young students for different pieces of content and how to bring curriculum to life in their classrooms. We are best positioned to provide advice on successful implementation of a new curriculum. It is very strange that the government chose to scrap previously developed drafts of the curriculum where teachers had provided input and move forward with a new draft without sufficient input from the teaching profession. To develop a curriculum without incorporating a grassroots, classroom-based understanding of how students learn could set up our students for failure. However, it's not too late. We are more than willing to work constructively in partnership with the government of Alberta to create a curriculum that is fit for modern classrooms. Not only is this cooperation possible, I would say that it is fundamentally necessary. We just need to be invited. Premier Kenney and his colleagues like to say that their policies are the result of listening to what Albertans told them loud and clear. The government has been told loud and clear by people across this province that this curriculum is unacceptable for modern schools based on the government's own guiding framework. Now it's up to them to do the right thing and listen. Thank you. And now I'll take your questions.
Thank you very much. So again, folks, if you have a question for President Schilling, please use the raise hand function, which should be located near or under the participants tab to be entered into the queue. Our first question comes from Tom Ross with 660 News. You can unmute yourself and go ahead, Tom.
All right. With the school board saying that they're not going to pilot the curriculum, we've heard the province say that that these school boards then won't be able to provide feedback on the curriculum since they're not going to pilot it. So do you worry that maybe if school boards en masse do not participate in the pilot, it kind of loses the influence to direct some change?
That's a great question, Tom, and thank you for that. I think what has to happen here is that the government needs to listen to not only teachers, but school boards. We're hearing from Francophone school boards, Indigenous groups, parents, that this curriculum is unacceptable. And so they need to stop the process of trying to implement this in the fall, listen to those groups, engage with the profession and the faculties of education who have also indicated that they're not supportive of this curriculum, and start again and do a rewrite to make sure that we get this right.
Dom, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and maybe we can just go back a bit to the draft that was being developed by the NDP. What were some of the distinct differences between how that was going and what happened with the UCP draft?
Well, the profession of teachers and faculties of education have all been involved in curriculum redesign for years. It's been sort of the standard of how it has been done. Through around 2015, I believe that we signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Alberta that made the association full partners in curriculum development. And teachers were involved in every step of the process. And that is easily seen within the draft that was put forth a couple of years ago. And it was a K-4 draft, by the way. And this one is a K-6. So teachers haven't exactly had any input onto that 5 and 6 section. That, of course, that memorandum of understanding was tore up in August 2019. That removed the profession from this redesign process. And what we saw from that K-4 design process, which teachers at the point of that time were excited to use it. Was it perfect? No, but they were excited to get into being able to pilot it. And what we saw released just a couple of weeks ago are two completely different documents.
For the questions, Tom. Our next question comes from Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Dean, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, hope you can hear me.
Yep.
So Jason, I mean, this is a bit of an unusual step, isn't it? I mean, everyone's got to stay in their lane. You know, elected officials are there to set the curriculum and teachers teach it. Well, obviously they have to have input. So this is a bit outside, isn't it? I mean, not only are you saying that teachers should not have to be part of this process, they should stop others from being part of the process. That's unusual, isn't it? I mean, you're sort of staying out of your lane. So why are you doing this?
Well, we met just this last week with our provincial executive council, and the word from across the province from teachers, and this is also included in our survey that we did, the preliminary findings last week, like 91% of teachers are unhappy with this curriculum. 90% of teachers are uncomfortable with bringing this into their classroom. And 95% of principals do not want to bring this into their schools and their communities. That is a resounding amount of feedback that says that we need to go back and look at this. And our teachers are concerned about their students, about what they're learning. And they want to make sure that we have a curriculum that is inclusive, that shows diversity, that is modern, and sets our students up for success in the future. And we just can't be silent and allow something that we feel will be damaging for our students in this province to go forward.
Thanks. Just as a follow-up, can you address two talking points I expect we'll hear again today? One is that teachers were part of the curriculum creation process. I think they talk about like 300 or something. And they've said that this survey isn't exactly, it's questionable because it's only, a small percentage of teachers who responded to it.
Yeah. So in terms of teachers' involvement into this draft curriculum that we saw released just recently, there were 100 teachers who were involved in looking at the curriculum last December. This is very different than the process that we had before, where there was close to 400 teachers involved in this process in multiple, throughout the entire process. So they met multiple times throughout the year to look at the draft. Last December, you had 100 teachers who met for 2 days that had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So we have no idea what they said, what they saw, and if the feedback that they provided to government was actually taken into account and is reflected in the draft that we see now. In terms of our survey, it's representative of teachers across this province. It hits every square mile of this province. It has teachers involved from all different areas within K-6. We have math teachers, all the disciplines that are in there. And statistically, it is representative of our teaching population.
Thanks, Dean. The next questions come from Janet French with CBC. Janet, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi there, thanks for taking my question. I'm just interested in a bit more detail about this advertising campaign. How much are you spending on that and what kind of ads can we see and who are you hoping to reach with that?
Our message today is for Albertans. It's for teachers, it's for parents, it's for individuals who care about where our province is going. And teachers have been saying, and the profession is saying, that this curriculum is not setting our kids up for a successful future, and we need to stop and relook at what we're doing. And we're saying today as an association that we are willing to work with government on this so that we can get this right. The campaign that you'll see will be some advertisements within newspapers. There's a website that will be available for people to go and show support for stopping the draft from being implemented in the fall. And then we will continue to work with the government, hopefully, on trying to make this something that is attainable for teachers and students to be in support of.
Sorry, I didn't hear a cost there. But I do have another follow-up question if you can tell me.
The cost of the campaign, I'm not entirely 100% sure of that specific answer there, Janet, sorry.
Okay. I also wanted to ask.
I can speak to that, sorry. Janet, actually the costs haven't been determined yet. We are still getting quotes on some of the stuff. Jason noted that decisions were made out of Provincial Executive Council that didn't wrap up until Tuesday. So we're still getting quotes on some of the stuff that will be part of that. So we don't know the total quite yet.
Okay, I also wanted to ask about the Francophone perspective. So there are 4 Francophone school boards in Alberta. All have now said they will not pilot this curriculum. I'm wondering how can the government get any meaningful testing or feedback done on the Francophone component of the curriculum if all 4 boards are refusing to participate?
That's a great question. And I support the Francophone boards in their decision not to implement this curriculum, because we've heard a lot from teachers who work in Francophone schools that this does not reflect Francophone perspectives, histories, or culture. And the government needs to listen to those boards, like they need to listen to the profession and all the other groups that have said this curriculum is not going to work, and go back to the drawing board and sit down and figure out a way that we can make this be redone so that it will show success for our students.
Thank you, Janet. The next questions come from Tim Brook, CTV. Tim, go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question, Jason. Maybe a little bit of a follow-up on what Tom was asking before, but was there ever any thought, any kind of discussion amongst the ATA to actually have members pilot this and be able to provide meaningful feedback? Was there ever, I know a lot of people were upset with this from the very beginning, but was there ever any kind of thought of everyone jumping in on this and then providing that negative feedback after this had already been piloted?
Teachers are always going to put their students first. And when they look at their curriculum, this is not putting students in our province first. This is taking them backwards and is potentially damaging to them. And teachers have indicated strongly that they do not want to pilot this curriculum. And I support that in their professional judgment. And I expect school boards to do the same thing, because teachers have the right and the responsibility to protest any assignment that doesn't fit that they can't teach. And if they feel that this curriculum is damaging and they can't teach it, then they've got the moral right to do that. And school boards should be supporting that, which means if you're hearing that across the board, you need to go back to the drawing board and relook at this.
And then I guess my follow-up would be, I believe you called it widespread criticism from the beginning, since this curriculum was introduced. I want to know how effective do you think this is going to be, this news release, these ads that are running out, a lot of boards saying no to this. How effective do you think this is going to be at actually getting the government to take another look at this and to maybe even consider a rewrite?
Well, that would be a great question for the government, because the government has heard from teachers, school boards, parent groups, including Francophone groups, Indigenous groups as well, faculties of education. The deans have come out and had a letter as well. They are the ones who need to take the advice that people are providing them and stop what they're doing and relook at the curriculum. And adding our voice to that is something that is extremely important for teachers, because like I said, teachers want to put their kids first in this. Kids always come first when it comes to the curriculum, and they need to make sure that the curriculum going forward is modern and acceptable to Albertans.
Next is Audrey Naveau, Radio Canada.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. You mentioned earlier that you do support the Francophone school boards not piloting the K-6 curriculum, but do you also encourage them to look at writing their own curriculum in French, like they're legally entitled to do?
Well, I know the curriculum development process was being done in French and in English. And as we asked during sort of the process of all of this, how was that development going along? And we were told that it was going along well, but still not a lot of questions being answered about the resources that you would see needed for the French component of the curriculum. I would encourage the government to work with the Francophone community to make sure that we have a curriculum that's going to serve their students as well as all students in Alberta.
And do you have, I'm really asking to know, but do you have any legal recourse to help the piloting of the curriculum? Is there anything you can do on that front?
I'm sorry, Audrey, could you repeat that? It was a little bit of background noise. I didn't quite hear your whole question.
Sorry. Do you have any legal recourse to stop the government from piloting the K-6 curriculum next fall?
Well, ultimately, this is a decision by government on whether or not they proceed with this. And like I said, the teachers have a responsibility to say that they don't want to teach this. And I hope that boards would respect that. I also would hope that the government respects that. Ultimately, they own this. It's their plan. But plans, we know, can change. And they can easily put a stop to this, as we're asking them to do today. Engage, again, the profession, the experts who are working on this, the professionals, and let's get a curriculum that's going to work for our students in our schools.
Next questions come from Taylor Brott with City News.
Hello. So I'm hoping to get a comment on kind of another topic right now. So the news yesterday about Alberta Education approving the request to move grades 7 to 12 online. I'm just wondering when this request was initially put through, and is the ATA satisfied with, I guess, this move by Alberta Education?
Thanks for the question, Taylor. I always go back to where we started last summer when we were looking at the reentry to school plan, and that is safety. Safety of our students and the people who are working in those buildings. And if we are seeing, and we also know that, what we see in terms of community spread will be echoed within our schools. And if we see a rise of cases, as we have in Calgary, especially with the variants, it's very concerning for teachers. And if this is what needs to be done in order to ensure the safety of our staff and students, then I can get behind that decision and support it.
Follow up, Taylor?
Yeah, I guess so. Do you know when the request was kind of put through by the school boards at all?
No, I don't know that, Taylor. I think you would have to maybe ask the government, because they're the ones who make the ultimate decision, or the school boards, about the discussions that they had with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. We have additional questions from Janet and Dean. Just checking to see if there's any new questioners out there. Let's go to Janet in the meantime. Janet French, CBC.
Thanks again. I guess sort of in the vein of this language of you saying like teachers have a moral and ethical responsibility not to sort of foist a curriculum onto students that they feel is inappropriate. How far are you willing to take this? Like, is this a job action kind of scenario? If the government's like, nope, they got to teach this as it is. This is what we think is best.
Well, when you look at job action tends to be tied to the bargaining process. And so you wouldn't necessarily see that there. What you need to have is school boards to support the professional judgment of their teachers and say, okay, if this is going to be voluntary and teachers are saying that they don't want to do it, then the school board should respect that decision by the teacher and not have them implement the curriculum if that board is choosing to work on the pilot.
Right, that's for the next year. But in 2022, if the government sticks to their schedule, the government's saying it's mandatory that school boards have to use this curriculum. So what happens if they push ahead with that and teachers still feel that it's unethical to teach this curriculum?
Sorry, Jan. Ultimately, the school board has, they can say we are teaching this and it's a lawful order of the board. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get to that point, Janet. But my hope is that we don't. My hope is that by hearing the voices of teachers, school boards, faculties of ed, the communities, parents saying we don't want this curriculum, is not going to serve our children in the future of our province well, that the government listens to that and that we don't see this curriculum that is potentially damaging to our students find its way into our classrooms in a permanent basis.
So as a reminder, if you're looking to ask President Schilling a question, use the raise hand function, which should be located around or near the participants tab at the bottom of your screen. We're going to go back to Dean Bennett with the Canadian Press. Dean, go ahead.
Thanks. Jason, I think my question's the same as Janet's. So you're saying that if teachers are directed to teach this curriculum as it is now in 2022, you'll cross that bridge when it comes to it. What if, and there probably will end up being a board that will pilot it, and they may be directing these teachers to pilot it. What are you prepared to do if teachers are directed to pilot this curriculum?
We would work as an association with those teachers and those school boards, with teachers if they're being voluntold to do this. They've got the right to say that they don't want to teach something that they're not comfortable with. We'll work with those teachers and those school boards on that individual basis to cross that bridge. But I think it would be a highly unfortunate move by a school board to force their teachers to work with a curriculum that they do not want to work with. I think that sets up a very untenable relationship between the school boards and their teachers. And I would hope that we wouldn't get to that spot.
Sorry, I'm probably oversimplifying it, but what if they do? You don't have anything in your collective agreement to stop a teacher to have a teacher opt out of a pilot? Would you have to go to court on this, or how would you stop it if you wanted to stop a teacher from being directed and having forced to implement the pilot?
Well, like I said, Dean, we would have to work with that teacher and their school board sort of on an individual basis to work that out in a way that would be agreeable.
Okay, thanks.
Let's go to Tom Ross, 660 News. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Dean and Janet have been saying there. It sounds certainly like this is really uncharted territory for you. So, are you still kind of trying to learn as you go about, what possibly you have to do moving forward if there is, like what Dean was saying, possible legal action or something like that? Like you just don't know what could be possible?
Well, I mean, those would be things that we would have to explore. But like I said, I would not want to see us get into that situation. I think that the government has heard signals from across the board from all Albertans in all corners of this province that this curriculum is unacceptable to them. If they were to put people in a situation where they were choosing to force to do that, is an extremely unfortunate place for government to be at that point. And I have no idea how this curriculum would be successful within schools.
I may take a second to add on to this, if you don't mind, Jason. Typically, when a board asks a teacher to do something, and if the teacher has a disagreement with that and seeks our advice, one of the first things we do is we ask them to get the directive in writing. So the board would then be asked to, put it down in writing and basically declare at that point that this is a clear, lawful order of the board. Teachers are obligated to follow lawful orders of the board, and if a teacher at that point decided not to, and I'm sure that we'd have lots of advice for them, if they decided not to, then there would be disciplinary action. Potentially at that point, we could appeal the disciplinary action. And I would point to a case like Dorval, where you had a teacher that for professional reasons disagreed with a lawful order, and it was taken to an arbitration process to decide that. And so I could see the association in that situation representing that teacher, but as Jason points out, we're sort of a long way away from that. And the hope is that the government can see to fixing the curriculum first. Tom, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'll just add, after what we saw, I think it was last year with the province saying that the CBE needs to get their finances in line, threatening to fire the board and all that. Is there any worry behind the scenes here of possibly the government just trying to strong arm you?
I'm not worried about the government trying to strong arm me or the association. I take my direction from our members, and our members have been very clear about what they feel about this curriculum.
I'm just looking to see if there are any further questions out there before we conclude. It looks like we maybe have exhausted all of the questions, but if you have any follow-ups, I would encourage you to email Mark Milne, and he can direct any questions or look into further. Once again, I'd like to thank you very much for your time this morning and for taking time to cover this important announcement. The news release should be in your email. And I'll note that Mark has probably followed up with the full text of the curriculum declaration. That text is also the text that will be appearing in newspapers starting tomorrow. Thank you again. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.